You went on a field trip recently? Is that what I heard?
I did. I did.
Actually, I think I saw a picture. I don't think I didn't hear this. I saw this.
Mm, keeping it secret.
Well,
Didn't
what
want
did
to.
you do? Posted a picture on social media, I believe. So,
Medias of the social. Yes.
yeah.
So, friend of mine, he reached out. He was asking. He kind of set up this kind of group of just a bunch of architects and called it the Tectonic Lodge, which is kind of cool. Sound. It's just not very many people were
This is it's like the Freemasons of architecture. What is
there.
this?
There you go.
The
Exactly.
Tectonic Lodge.
But so one of the things that we want to try to achieve is just basically get a group together to go and visit architecture and take a look at it and experience it, hug it, rub your hands
Punch
across
it.
the punch it, all that other stuff.
Wow.
So we had planned a trip to the nearest Louis Kahn building to us, which just happens to be in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And so we looked it up. I mean, we kind of rescheduled it a couple of times to try to align with other people's schedules, and then people started to drop off on the trip, and we were just like, well, let's just do it. And so he and I hopped in the car and drove down to Fort Wayne, Indiana. Both of us, both of us looked ahead of time to make sure that it was open and everything else. Looked
Yeah.
on the website, it was open. Get there. Guess what it wasn't?
It was not open.
Not only was it not open, it was not accessible. Why was it not accessible? Because it's going under a major renovation and addition.
So the website's just out of date.
Well, we looked at the art center in general.
Hmm.
It is one of many buildings in the art center.
Oh, gotcha.
And so unfortunately,
So you didn't
art
read below, the details, the deets.
we didn't dig into the details saying, "Oh yeah, by the way, the two guys that are driving down from Detroit to Fort Wayne, Indiana to look at one specific building only and nothing else, they really shouldn't come because the thing's closed."
Yeah. Yeah. So you got to study it from afar? Is that what happened?
Well, I mean, you could get up close enough. I mean, the construction fence was pulled in pretty tight to the building, at least on the con part of it, and then there's the construction fencing around the addition. And we spent a lot of time on the side of the building where you could look at both the con building and the addition at the same time.
Hmm.
We've got notes. We've got
I was
notes.
thinking, oh man, what a
Lots
project.
and
What a,
lots and lots
could
of
you
notes.
imagine the pressure of doing an addition to a con building? Would you even
It
say yes to a project like that?
So this is the second time I've seen a recent addition to a building done by a noteworthy architect.
Mhm.
We have an addition that was done to the Grosse Pointe Public Library that was done by Breuer, and I had notes on that one too. Just the thing about it is it seemed like it missed some cues on alignments and things like that. Whatever. I mean, I get it and all that other stuff. So there's that. And this one wasn't necessarily one of Breuer's like most notable buildings. It was just done by him.
Mhm.
And honestly, it's brick, it's very modern, and it's very modern in kind of like the same time period as he was doing with all of his brutalist buildings. And so it almost seems like this was I, I don't know the history of it, but it was almost like a favor for somebody. And they're like, oh yeah, by the way, none of that concrete stuff that you've been doing.
It's
We
got to
need
be brick.
it's got to be brick.
Just a last minute change.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
they probably didn't say that until, right before
pr-
it went to bid. Yeah.
probably probably. So we get down to Fort Wayne, and we're looking at the addition. First, we looked at the renderings of the completed building, and it actually didn't look that bad. And then you start to see, then you walk around the building, you see the addition, but you also see the addition that does not look anything like the renderings.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh,
Because
oh, oh.
what kind of changes are you talking about? Are you, like it's
Uh,
the shade of gray and the material's different, or are you talking like
you
it
know,
looks
funny,
significantly different?
funny enough, shades of gray in the types of, in the color of materials. I mean, there was more white that would stand off of the brick a little bit more. It was kind of more taupey than anything else. It was kind of, oh, it
I'm
was,
making a
oh,
face. I'm
yeah,
making a
yeah.
face here
Make the
when you
face
say
because
taupey.
it is definitely not. And then, so you've heard, I mean, you and I've walked around plenty of buildings together, and my stance on two different material change on the same plane,
In the same plane. In the same plane.
in the
Yes.
same plane, aligned face to face with no real joint, no relief, no nothing. Just kind of like it goes from one material to another, and it's flush and it's bad and it's not aligned. And there was so many misalignments with the very, the rigor of what Khan does, the alignments, the like everything has a point and purpose behind why it is where it is and what it's doing. And the addition looks so haphazard. It's a large firm, a very large firm, actually. And if somebody's listening and they're yelling at me, it's like, hey, didn't you say that you understand the whole like value engineering? I don't think this is value engineering. I I really don't.
What is it then? What do
Um,
you think happened? Let's pontificate. Let's speculate.
Man, are you really
Because
trying to
we're
get me in
guaranteed to
trouble?
be wrong. This is the beauty of speculating. It's like, okay, we're wrong. And therefore and let's just put it out there in front. We're probably going to
Well,
be wrong.
so let me ask you this. So we've you've done adaptive reuse projects, right?
I mean,
Yeah,
I would call them
or
modernizations.
that's actually that's renovations with
Yeah.
additions and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know if you've done. I know I've done preservation projects with an addition to it,
Yeah.
and the rules behind kind of the how you treat the existing building versus the new additions and things like that. And that's what I was, I guess, kind of disappointed in when I saw what I saw, because this building has got to be on the register. I didn't look it up, and I probably should have before I started talking about it, but I didn't look it up to see whether or not it was on the register. But it's in like the last projects that he did, and so you would assume that it was on the register. And so, there should be some bit of reverence in how you deal with any of the additions that you do, that you put on buildings like this.
Hmm.
Department of Interiors has guidelines for it. Depending on the jurisdiction, they've got their own guidelines that they add to, like, their historic buildings.
Well, you would also assume that there would be beyond guidelines like committees and
And
reviews
you
and
think that there'd be
things like that.
committees, especially since this is their big art center,
Hmm.
um, for that. And so that they probably have a board of directors and everybody else, and probably some people who are on like their design committee or their expansion committee and things like that. And
Hmm.
most likely there's going to be some architect poking their nose into, hey, I'd like to be on that committee kind of thing. And you look at the addition, and it's so interestingly out of place because it's creating a new entrance, but it's completely ignoring the portion of the building where you can walk in and out of. So it's basically attaching to the side rear of this building, but it's
Hmm.
facing a public park, it's facing parking. So it makes sense that if you're going to kind of reorient kind of the main entrance, or at least an entrance into this building, that you would do it there. But you would also want to be sensitive to what's there, the geometry that's there, the material that's there. They pretty much ignored all of that. They, they basically cut out a bunch of brick to align the materials, cut out a bunch of like Kahn's bricks. So apparently I know what those bricks want to be, heading to the landfill.
Gone. Yeah, gone.
But, it was one of these, it's like, oh, so close, but so far. None of the door sizes match or pay homage to or whatever. And I don't know. I guess for me, it's just there's such a rigor to what Kahn does that everything about that rigor, everything about the order, everything about kind of like the deliberate placement of things was 100% ignored. And
what's interesting to me about that is, could the client just really dislike their Kahn building? Could that be part of the scenario?
They very much could have. They could have said, I get that you weirdos who drive down here spend a couple of hours driving down here to go and see a building, to go and touch the Kahn building. You guys you love this thing, but
we don't.
Yeah. And but in turn, though, they know what they have. They know the status of. Well, I say that, but then I also know that there's architecturally significant buildings dropping every day. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah, I just that to me is the first thing that comes to mind when you do something like that. Because I've done what I would feel like is kind of the opposite, where I worked on a campus where it was a William Pereira campus.
Mm-hmm.
They hated the Pereira buildings, but you look at the Pereira buildings and you know exactly why they hate them. Like they were concrete boxes with no windows, and it was these were learning environments, and there was a lot. It wasn't functioning for what they needed it to be. It was a school campus. It was higher education, and so everything that we did, we didn't graft on to an existing Pereira building. We built a new building, but everything we did was in direct opposite response to what they had already on the campus. It was like, here's what we don't like. The new thing will be the opposite of that.
And honestly, in a way, most preservationists, they want you to build additions, or they want you to build of your time, of the time.
Right.
Not
and specifically contrasting the original.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So that there's no confusion over what's original and what's new.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a difference between preservation and recreation. There's a lot of people who want it to be recreations. But honestly, if you look at the standards, they tell a different story. And I get the people who want to kind of maintain a style and a character, because a lot of times there are a lot of additions that are of our time that are completely ignore the context of the existing buildings. So, and it's funny. So fast forward, and we can come back to the Kahn building, but fast forward to on our drive home, we decided to kind of drive through and go and take a look at an addition to the Toledo Art Museum that was done by Frank Gehry. And it was really interesting, very neoclassic building, which of course with not a neoclassic addition to it. And to be quite honest with you, of all of the Gehry buildings that I have seen throughout my life, I don't know why, but I actually think this is one of my favorites.
Oh, I was going to ask, because I know how I've been with you when we've experienced other Gehry buildings.
Yeah.
And it's like, not a fan.
Well, here's the funny
usually
thing.
Comes down to the detailing. Yeah.
And here's the funny thing is, I was a huge fan design-wise. And unfortunately, I'm always disappointed in the execution-wise.
Yeah.
Sure. The one, why am I blanking on the name of that building?
I can't think of the name either.
Yeah. But I mean, that one, what was interesting about that one, as is both you and I experienced, was that one of the details that was just amazingly just kind of fell apart. And I'm looking at my list here. The SANAA building, the SANAA Center.
I was like, I have pictures, but I don't have a name. Yeah.
And it's that one canopy over the door with the corrugated metal that looks like somebody took some tin snips, but it was like
somebody like Edward Scissorhands. Like
it was some arthritic dude who could barely wield some tin snips, and he was just like,
and then they wrapped it in bird netting. Like, it was bad. It was so bad.
It was so bad. And
I don't think that was original. It couldn't have been.
And the thing about it is that it has to have been, because if you go to the other side of the building, there's similar things on that side of the building.
It didn't hold up well.
It didn't hold up well.
Yeah.
But honestly, this one, it's interesting because when you're looking at it from the street, you just see this kind of like you go up a series of steps to the classical building, and there is one of those Art Nouveau Paris metro entrances, the very beautiful. And so you kind of like, you walk up that, and it's kind of in line with the front doors and everything. And it's just so, it's the entrance of it sits up high, and then you kind of follow it along the roadside, and the ground is kind of bermed up, and it's got these little small rolling berms, hills. I'm reluctant to call them hills, but it's just this rolling landscape, and you can kind of see a little bit of a peak up. But then as you get closer to it, you actually walk up and you look down at the base of it, because it looks like it was kind of carved out of the ground. And it looks a lot like basically they were excavating to do an addition to the building, and found this big titanium unearthed this thing and said, well, it's too big for us to move. Let's just, carve it out and occupy it. And that's sort of what it sort of feels like.
It does kind of look like it was left by previous civilization. Yeah.
It does. It does. It very much does. And it's actually, so we were there and it started to rain, and it was interesting because first of all, you think, it's raining and we're at a Gehry building. This can't be good. But all of the corner joints were beautifully done. The rain was rolling over. And what was interesting about it is that,
what's the material? What is it? Is it
we couldn't no, it's metal. But we couldn't figure out what kind of metal.
It's like a really matte texture, though. That's why I asked.
It's a matte texture. It's dark, and when it rains, it gets darker. But also you can see the streaking in it. It looks weathered and striated, as if it were a big chunk of alien metal left in there that has basically been exposed to the elements for a very long time.
Yeah. I think it says it was 1993, so I mean it's at least that old. But also what you're saying is it just looks weathered. Like it
looks weathered.
A texture to it. Yeah.
Yes. And what's interesting is so when it was raining, it started to rain a little bit, and then it was picking up pretty hard. And so it was already to the point where we're soaking wet. So it's just like, we ain't going to run around and like, oh my God, let's get out of the rain. I'm like, let's just look at the building now that,
let's just watch it get wet.
And what was interesting about it is that there was, because of the angles and stuff, the water would rush down one thing, and then it would rush down the face of it, create kind of like these very, very wonderful little like moments of like these man-made waterfalls along the face of it. But the one thing that put my mind at ease is that at all of the corners and all of the edges where all of the two different planes come together, it just rolled right on by, because the detailing was nice. It was sealed up. There was no open joints. There was no kind of like gaps at the bottom where they had to infill it with mesh. And remember, at the
perfect thing to fill a gap with, mesh.
Yeah. Remember at that
what
one
year was Disney Concert Hall done? Do you know?
Oh, I remember.
because this is 93
What's
and
What's interesting is Disney is after that, but I think the design was before that though,
oh,
because I remember I've got a book on LA architecture where they had the original design for the Disney concert hall that was very similar to the final product, but it was in limestone, not, is it? It's
oh,
not stainless steel.
stainless. Yeah.
Is it
Yeah, it says
stainless?
it was designed beginning 1987, opened in 2003. So yeah, I mean they were
Yeah.
in the studio at
So
the
he
same
was,
time for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. And what's interesting is like every other one, sort of like there was the open joint,
Yeah.
and that one decided to be,
Disney Concert Hall is open joint. That's why I'm asking
yeah,
if these were like it
and,
seems like they were trying different things in different
yeah.
locations
And this one
for
is like
different reasons.
beautifully sealed up.
Hmm.
And actually, it's surprisingly enough, it's actually really nice.
Yeah.
It in
Cool.
a very, like I said, it's like I loved his design concepts until they just became the same thing over and over again.
Well, did you go inside or was this just an exterior
It's a
experience?
student, it's
Oh,
student access, so you had to have a student badge. I think if we would have gone in through the actual museum, we could have
uh-huh.
possibly gotten over there, but I think it's classrooms and meeting rooms and things like that now.
Well,
But it's attached to the museum.
okay. The Disney Concert Hall interior
Yeah,
is worth it. It's worth seeing, hands down. Incredible
yeah,
spaces. Absolutely. Like, of course, weird spaces. What would you expect
sure.
from the exterior geometry? So hats off to actually figuring out how how that kind of came together in the interior. But whoa, really, really interesting on the inside, for sure.
Yeah, and the only thing that I've ever really heard people like kind of moan about is not necessarily the concert hall per se, but in the application of that design in museums like Guggenheim
Mm.
Bilbao, is that the spaces kind of dominate and detract from its intended purpose, the art.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I can see
you
that.
know
I've been to maybe one other. I mean, maybe I've been to more than one other Gehry building. But isn't there like the in Seattle? There's a museum, and I'm trying to remember. Yeah, the Museum of Pop
oh yeah,
Culture.
yeah, I remember your
Not as successful as Disney for sure.
yeah, I
To
remember
me,
I
in my
remember you
opinion,
sending me pictures of that when you were there. Now,
yeah,
exterior wise, some of the like the metal and all,
similar.
like that
Yeah, yeah,
was, kind of nice with all the different colored metal and things.
right.
What was interesting is across the street from the Gehry building in Toledo was the SANAA building, and it was the Museum of Glass, and it's all glass from ground plane to, well, probably just a little bit below the parapet.
Hmm.
No parapet, gravel stop, and just like a steel banding edge that goes around it. And it's this very kind of sinuous, kind of flowing thing. Makes these great little spaces for courtyard spaces. And then, on the both like the entry court as you move into the building. And then there are these like little courtyard spaces. Because it's kind of like if you want to kind of call it a grid, it's not really a grid per se, but there's four spaces interconnected in the center. And then there's just these courtyard spaces all the way around it.
Mm.
And each of them kind of like serve their own little purpose of whether it's an interior courtyard or an exterior courtyard. The acoustics in there are so strangely appealing,
Really?
um, because like one of the things I have fun with when you go to spaces like that where you can feel the echo when
Yeah.
you're walking through and you're talking, you're like, wait. And then I start to whistle and like whistle something and then just like hear it kind of like in stereo as it's like rolling around my head. You're just like, this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and it didn't really feel like that cavernous of a space because it's all glass. But what was really interesting about that building is how innovative they, so it was the glass exterior wall. Then there was like this little interstitial space of probably about 3 feet. And then there was a glass inner wall. So it almost, these walls almost created a double pane window that was separated by
3 feet.
By 3 feet. And
weird.
And they were the space, the interior space between the two curtain walls was conditioned all the way through, because you saw down on the floor, you saw registers and everything else. And then they also had they had curtains very much like what you would expect to see at the Farnsworth House, because that was the first thing that I thought of when I saw it. I'm like, oh, Farnsworth House kind of detail. And it was very similar to that, very simple. You don't really see the curtain rod, not rod, the track of where the curtains were and stuff. But it was really interesting. It was a glass museum, but also they had, like a glass blowing, kiln, like the stoves, the ovens, the kilns, the whole thing, a full display going on there. It was kind of nice. I mean, it was, they're doing some renovations, some repairs to some of the detailing, and I swear it's an affliction that I have, where I'm looking at it and I'm trying to solve what would I have done differently to try to maintain the same design, but what could I have done to make the detail better for like waterproofing or whatever. And so, me and my friend Scott, we were sitting there and we were looking at it, talking through what we could have done differently design-wise. Like,
do you feel like,
how could you have detailed that differently?
Do you feel like you could have done that before you built it? Or do you feel like you have to have seen this version of it to know that it doesn't work, and then therefore come up with a different solution? Or better,
I'm going to be 100% fair.
Better.
I'm going to be 100% fair to them. I think it was because of what like the failure part of it. I'm like, well, what could you have done differently
because nobody designs it to fail.
Oh,
I don't think.
Absolutely
right?
not.
So yeah, I mean, nobody would do that on purpose. It happens, right? Like when you're talking about the Gehry buildings, and it starts to rain and you get worried, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, that's not what they set out to do, but at the same time, it's like, I mean, this is the risk. One of the big risks of architecture, of doing what we do, right? Is this, 10 years? I don't know when that building was done, but years later, yep, it's leaking.
Yeah, you're like, okay, and so this is one of those ones where I wish, because it is such a slick, clean building. And unfortunately, that particular detail fails them, fails that kind of like seamless kind of, because when you see it, when you're looking at photographs of it, or if you're like just staring at it when you're standing in the grass next to it, and you see the glass going up, and then it hits basically the little attachment band, the little fascia band that goes all the way around it at the parapet edge. Right? I keep calling it a parapet. It's not a parapet. It's just a drip edge. So, when it goes up to that, and they wanted it to be seamless. They didn't want to see any kind of like flashing or anything like that. And I get that. But what happens is that the water is getting in between the roofing membrane and that piece of metal. And it's starting to swell. And so you get this kind of like warping or kind of like pushing out of like of that metal. And so the metal's not aligned anymore. It's not this clean line between the glass and the metal. And this is where they made this detail up. This was a one-off. No one's ever done this detail before. I guarantee you they're not going to do that detail again. They're going to improve that detail because they saw, this failed. What could we do better? But this is one of those ones where I sort of wish we as architects, especially when we're trying to do avant-garde, brand new things that have never been done before, that we are allowed to, or we invest the time into doing a little bit of trial and error, doing some R&D, trying to see, okay, I've never done this detail before. I don't know if it's going to work or not. We should really try to figure out if it's going to work or not.
How would you do
And
that? Like, are you talking about mock-ups?
well,
What are you talking about?
so there's like a full scale mock-up that gets to the point where, you know, in a way, when you get to the mock-up stage, in my opinion, it might be too late.
Yeah, well,
You know,
exactly. That's why I'm wondering what you're
so
proposing here,
so
because you
I'm
need
more
something
proposing.
10 years in advance before you're
Uh,
willing to actually put it into production.
Yeah, exactly. I'm more proposing. Okay, here we are at the end of DDs. At end of DDs, you should have already kind of like known that this is what you want that particular detail to look like. Now, how do we make it work? We've got this whole time period between DDs and CDs to
3
figure
weeks.
out how to three. Oh, how painfully true that is. See, now you just ruined my whole thing because I was gonna say
I know,
you got all
because
this.
it's the truth.
It is the truth. Damn it. Because, like, I don't know
I
if I
mean, and
can.
don't let the insurance companies hear what you're saying either, right? Like, oh, I wish we could do that. Oh, we're gonna make you do that because if that's what you
Yeah,
actually need.
true. Well, I mean, when you have like these tried and true, tested,
Well, yeah, this is
like
like
off the shelf stuff. Of course, they're going to be like, yeah, you're fine because the manufacturer stands behind that detail. You're doing a detail that's that
been there,
out of
done that. Yeah.
their catalog. We've already seen it. We're good with that. It's those new things. It's the
Yeah.
hey, no one's ever done this before. Like everything that Gary's done.
Well,
Yeah,
and well, there's hey, we've never done this before. Has it never been done before? Period, ever? And that's
true.
where the industry doesn't talk to each other, right? It's
Yeah.
quote unquote proprietary at that,
Hmm.
at that level. And so those kinds of things don't get shared. And if
Right.
there's a manufacturer who has done something, they will share whatever they can, of course.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but not the ones solving it from ideation to completion.
Well,
They're coming in where they come in.
so a detail that I did a decade ago, I was looking at kind of like the manufacturer's standard details. It didn't quite do what I wanted to do. Most of it was in a horizontal application. I wanted it in a vertical application. I wanted it to actually cantilever a lot further than what they were doing. Um, and what was cool is that we actually developed together a detail to make what I wanted to do work. And still to this day, funny enough, it's still standing, it's still working. They've
I like how you say funny enough. Well, that was weird.
suckered them into doing that one,
Funny
and
enough.
it
All
still
right.
works. Well, what was interesting is because they were so like this particular institution was so gun shy of doing anything that wasn't from a standard catalog because they had
I've worked with people like that before who will you are only allowed to do details that are
yeah
from the it's like seriously I that's
yeah
not a place I would want to work.
well so they had this big beautiful atrium space and it was curved and it had all of this curved glass hand railing and the atrium was this beautifully done structural system with a all glass roof. It got hot in there and just systematically, just without warning, the curved glass would pop and break depending on where you were at, what time of day.
Oh,
And we're not talking
nightmare.
about a small space either. We're talking about a massive space. And there's glass all the way around this big, huge open atrium space, and then coming down this beautiful, decorative staircase, with these floating stairs and these glass handrails. And sure enough, and of course, I pitched glass handrails as well right after all of this event, and they're like, yeah, no, which completely changed the design of some of the
Mm,
things that we wanted to do, and which really kind of bummed me out, but. In turn, though, like I had to prove to them that the detail that we were working for these terracotta fins would would work. And so we just worked with the manufacturer. The manufacturer stood behind it. We even did, a couple of mock-ups before, we even released it for a bid. And again, surprisingly enough, they bought it.
You're a professional.
Funny enough.
Of course they did.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's just
You've continued the summer of architecture. I'm so proud of you.
I've continued the summer of architecture.
I didn't get to do that. Like, I don't have what was the name of your group? Your group again?
Tectonic Lodge.
I don't have a Tectonic Lodge.
You are officially invited to the Tectonic Lodge.
I feel like I'm living through you at some
cost
level,
you a little bit.
It cost me a little bit to get there.
Yeah.
But that's cool that you got to do that. So you got to be disappointed by an addition to a con building. You got to actually admire a Frank Gehry building at some level, and then you're
mentally redesign a SANAA
you've become
building.
a project architect on the SANAA building.
Yeah.
A decade after it went up. So
yeah,
all good. Very cool. Oh, I'm jealous because that's all architecture. That's great.
That's all architecture. Yeah. And in my own summer of architecture of just like my project is in Baltimore is it's still a year off from being completed, but it's just kind of fun to see things slowly but surely kind of come off of the paper and come into reality and say, yeah, that's what we wanted it to look like.
Oh, good. Hopefully it wasn't the opposite.
Well,
we're going to have to address that one.
Well, there are some lessons learned as well. You're like, well, this, so let's ask a question. If you've got all these walls that are like all these high-end finishes and you don't want to put any devices on them, where do you put them?
Ceiling? I don't know. What I'm in that margin that Louis Kahn did along the floor line of.
You unexpectedly have the contractor install them in a place that they shouldn't have in the first place. You're like, damn,
coordination issues.
And then, of course, what is the first thing that your client says to you as you're walking through with them? Why is that there?
Yeah, I was going to say, why is that there?
Man.
Are these things just too small to show up in the model? Is that the deal? Like they're just under the threshold of we will model this, or what?
There are some things that, they didn't model in, we just had kind of a general, like general mounting height thing. And so when they show up in the plans, I'm not even
not in the interior elevations. Huh?
I'm not even going to expose the fact that
this is too.
It was just something that was missed.
Bummer.
And it wasn't everywhere. It's just, unfortunately, this particular place is so high visibility that it was one that when you miss something, it is seen. It hurts. Yeah. It hurts. Yeah.
I was just talking with somebody, a friend who doesn't know anything about architecture the other day. We were talking about this exact thing. It was like, because they have this, he moved into a new house and talking about this feature wall. And I said, that's where stuff shows up in your building where you didn't expect it, right there in the middle of that wall.
Exactly.
It was like, what are you talking about? So I went through that exact thing that you just talked about with him. And it's like, oh, I could see how that would be very frustrating. Oh, you don't even know.
Yeah. Or when you do go through the painstakingly kind of arduous layout of things and say, okay, strobe, here's our big wall, here's entry doors into this space, here's all of this going on, we've got all of these different things going on, we want them to line up, we want it to be orderly, we want it to be symmetrical, so we install the strobe exactly where we want the strobe to be. It gets installed exactly where we want it to be, and they say, well, we need a camera there. We want to put a rear-facing camera that take pictures of what's the lectures that are going on. You're like, it's at the same place as this. So then they install it. They cut open a hole and they install it kind of like right next to it.
Just run the conduit on the outside. What are you talking about?
Not only do they put it next to it, but it's slightly up from. Could have been aligned. Could have been like,
Absolutely.
and it's just like, man, really? Like, 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 look at this room. I mean,
There's
you see that we spent a little bit of time thinking where everything should go, and then we decide to put something where it shouldn't
you
be.
the thing is that installer had one job and they did it and they didn't think about everything else that went on around it.
It,
Yeah.
yeah, I so I've seen installers, whether they're electricians, whether they're mechanical contractors and stuff, who will think about kind of like what the end aesthetics look like. But if we, the architect, or we, the engineer, didn't think about anything, there should be no reason in the world that we should expect them to think about it. You
Mm.
know? And so, like, the outcome that we get, sometimes it's of our own making. Now,
You get
there
what you
is
get and you don't throw a fit. Yep.
exactly. And then you, you must have heard that a few times on the
Maybe.
job site. It's
Maybe.
yeah. There's a few times where I just like walk out. I'm like, that's not what I meant to do.
Yeah. Right. All right.
Well, school's back in
Well,
session.
you're
We
keeping my architectural dream alive,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
Well, I'll inform you next time around. The school's back in session. I'm
Yeah.
back in session at school, so that's fun.
Had so
Yeah.
much fun. You got to do it again.
Got to do it again. Want to do it
All
again.
right. Well, that'll be a good topic. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Talk to you soon.
All right.